Hello all, in this video we will talk about models used in high-speed signal simulations. So, one of the important aspect of high-speed signals is it is very difficult to analyze the performance of the high-speed signal just by calculations because we have to understand the transmission line parameters, we have to understand the buffer characteristics of the ICEs which are transmitting the high speed signal. So there are many aspects associated to it. So designers rely on the signal integrity simulation tools to perform analysis of high speed designs, and based on which there will be several actions taken. Now to perform the signal integrity simulations, we need to know what all things are required. So example, if you see, there is one scenario here where there is a driver and there is a receiver and there is a channel in between. So a transmission line basically connecting the driver to the receiver. So you all know why we are saying a transmission line and not a PCB trace, because at high speed signal, high frequencies, the PCB traces act as a transmission lines, right? We all know, we talked about these in our videos in our channel. And then that this is scenario 1, and then scenario 2. You can see here a driver sending a signal to a connector. So in our boards, right, there can be two ICs between which the communication happens. Example, if we take a Ethernet communication, for example, SGMA kind of communication, we have communication between the processor and the Ethernet 5, okay, MAC to 5 communication, which is a differential communication that is between two chips. So we have a driver IC and then we have a receiver IC. So if it's a bidirectional communication, again from the receiver side there will be communication. So that's another aspect. So we are talking about the communication and the channel here. So we are talking about a driver to a receiver. And then there could be another scenario where there is a backplane communication, for example, where or some add-on boards on your main PCB, where you have a main board and you have an add-on card. So in those scenarios, you have a IC to which there'll be internally there'll be a driver to that specific interface, and then you will be routing the signal on the PCB to the connector. So two different scenarios, right? So we can say this is active IC, this is active, which is an IC, this is again active, which is an IC, but connector is a passive thing, right? It doesn't need any voltage to operate or anything, correct? So it will have losses associated with it. So to characterize or to use these scenarios or simulate these scenarios in the simulation tools, we need to model the driver, we need to model the receiver or driver in this case, or the connector in the tool, such that the exact replica of what is there in the circuit, you bring it onto the simulation tool and perform the simulations. So to have these driver or we can say IC and the connector models, we have two types of modeling that is done. One is called the IBIS model, which is called the input output buffer specification model, which actually talks about the behavioral characteristics of the IC that we have selected. So it talks about the package RLC, it talks about the voltage specifications, it talks about the drive strengths. All these will be mentioned by this IBIS model, which is a very important model. And then we have another model which is called S parameter specification. So what is the difference between IBIS and S parameter? S parameter talks more about connector kind of scenarios where we characterize the channel, and this is also basically the behavioral model where the entire connector characteristics are mentioned in that model. So we import these models to the simulation tools, and then we do perform the simulations. So there are other kind of simulations, we will talk about it in later videos, but for you, if you are starting with signal integrity, these two are the major things which need to be understood. And what are the results out of these simulations? How do we analyze them? What are the tools available? And what are the actions to be taken based on these results? All these we will discuss in future videos. Hope we gave you a glimpse of what is needed for simulations and what models are required. We will talk about more of this in the next videos. Please post if you have any questions. Thank you.